Hey everyone, and welcome back to Conversations with the Planets. Today will be the season finale for season three, and we will be talking about the process that Lori went through to put together her Asteroid Encyclopedia book, which she's in the process of publishing. So, hey Lori.
Hello. I'm so excited. We're finally here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I've talked about it here and there on here for the past, however many years. Um, but it feels so exciting to have it be real, have it be finished, and at least the writing portion of it. Um, and yeah, we're coming up with dates, we're putting things together. It's all coming along, and I thought it would be really fun to kind of just like rehash the process
Mhm,
of just the whole book and just how crazy it's all been for the past couple years.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, the whole thing really started in 2019. Um, I guess sometime in 2018, I remember somebody bringing up asteroids. I was listening to the astrology podcast a lot, so I'm wondering if that was how I found it, but I really don't remember. I just remember somebody saying something about an asteroid, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, this is so exciting. I want to look this up. I want to go find them." But I didn't know anything about mythology at the time, and I didn't have anybody I was really drawn to. So there wasn't really anything to look for. And then in 2019, um, I remember picking up Demetra's book for the first time, the Asteroid Goddess book. And I read it and got really excited about having Pallas on my sun and resonating with a lot of the goddesses' archetypes and, feeling that spark for giving the feminine their like lost voices and all of that. Um, and at some point in 2019, I remember being at an acro festival because I was a circus performer. I still am, but pre-COVID, that was pretty much what I was doing full time. And I remember having a moment where I was in an Icarian class because I specialized in Icarian acro, and somebody made a comment that it was named after Icarus. And I remember the feeling of like, oh, I finally have somebody to look up in my chart. Like, there's finally, like, he probably has an asteroid. Icarus is such a big story. And it was a story I've always resonated deeply with anyway, and like, just loved. And,
All right, just really quickly, I also just want to share with
yeah,
folks that we have a whole episode talking about
yes,
Icarus, so you can go
we
search
do.
that in our history. And we also went to Icaria, which is
Yeah,
the Greek island where Icarus is said to have fallen in the sea, and we have a whole episode. It's spelled like Icaria with a K, but we have a whole episode about that as well. So if you're like wanting to go down the Icarus rabbit hole, we definitely have more episodes
yes.
for you.
Please go down the Icarus rabbit hole. But yeah, I just remember being so excited to go home from this festival and like go look up Icarus in my chart. Such a like nerdy moment. And I got home and sure enough, he was like 30 minutes away from my descendant. And I do partner acrobatics named for Icarus. And I just remember having a moment where I was like, oh, there's something here. Like, I don't quite know what it is or what I'm doing or what this is going to become, but there's something here. And so I started a document on my Google Docs and I just named it Asteroids. And I wrote Icarus down and I wrote everything that I found on him and all of the different ways that he could show up being on my descendant and I just became so obsessed with this one asteroid that I found. And eventually I started adding in my notes and thoughts about Pallas especially, but the four goddesses and other ones that I would hear about here and there. And, the document didn't get used that often, but I did revisit it pretty frequently with Icarus. And obviously, COVID happened in 2020, and when I lost my circus job originally, because that wasn't essential. I ended up kind of falling into a space of doing astrology full time, but the asteroids were always this thing that I just felt undeniably, but also unexplainably drawn to. And I would occasionally pick up a book of mythology and I would read a little bit and Google all the names and see if they had asteroids and look them up if they did. And I started to notice that every single time I did that, because I felt drawn to somebody, they were prominent in my chart. And it was really fascinating how it just seemed like every time I intuitively thought I was going to have that asteroid prominent, I did. And so then skip ahead to 2023. It was right after my Saturn return ended. It was March. And I remember Saturn moving into Pisces, and I had just published my first book.
And
Um,
also, Pisces is your ninth house of publishing.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, and I published my first book towards the very end of my Saturn return. And I knew that I
Breadcrumbs from the
wanted,
Universe. What's your first
yes,
book called?
breadcrumbs from the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I was more of a modern astrologer when I wrote that too, so it's funny to revisit it. Um, but yeah, it like taught a bunch of astrology and tarot and just like all these other things, like how to follow your intuition. And I loved the process of writing it just way more than I ever thought. And it was funny, I went to a medium years and years ago that told me I was going to write a bunch of books in this lifetime. And then I did a past life regression hypnosis and I kept seeing a stack of books. And it felt confusing and unexplainable, but it felt like it was this lifetime. It felt like I was going to do that. But I wasn't a writer, so I didn't really know where this was coming from. But then something kind of took over, and I felt like writing that first book. And after I finished it, and my Saturn return ended, I kind of had this now what moment. And I had done all these things right before I turned 30 that I really wanted to do. And then I was like, now what? Like I checked all these things off my bucket list. What am I working on? And so I continued to work with these asteroids and do all of this. But then I remember somebody saying something about how we have no asteroid resources. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like it's really annoying that there's no resources on this. And it hit me that, oh, I've been creating this 100-page document of all of the asteroids I was finding and the notes on them. And I was obsessively reading different pantheons of myth and individually searching every character to see if they had an asteroid. And I would add them to my little collection. And something just kind of clicked. And I was like, maybe I'm supposed to publish this. Like, maybe this is going to be one of those books. And so I started taking it a little more seriously. And of course, Saturn did move into my ninth house, so it makes a lot of sense. My Venus is there, so is my MC, but later. And so then we went to Demetra's retreat, and
Yeah,
that
she had
was
a
like,
whole retreat about asteroids specifically.
yeah, and that was towards the end of 2023, like December.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, Alicia and I went, and I just remember feeling so inspired, but also just, hey, we have no resources on this. Like,
Yeah.
this needs to be put out there. And it really just lit a fire under me. Um, so I became kind of obsessed. And moving into 2024, especially the summer of 2024, I like eat, sleep, and breathe that book. Like all I did was read myths and surround myself with friends who also liked myth, and I was in my computer 24/7. I was looking up every possible deity who had any kind of asteroid and anything like that. And that continued, pretty much never ended until June 1st of 2025. I had just taken a little bit of a break from the book for a little while until I got back from Norwalk and I realized it's time. Like, I don't want, at that point, I had been working on it for like 6 years and I don't want to just keep doing this. I wanted to actually finish it. So I was really overwhelmed. I just had hundreds of pages worth of bullet points on a Google Doc. I was like, how do I even structure this? But I had a friend who was helping me with the structuring and editing, and I really loved the way that she sent it back to me when she structured like six of them. And I was like, okay, great, but this is going to take me hours, if not years, to structure like almost 1,000 characters to look like these. And I just started to feel really overwhelmed by that task, especially because I'm not super tech savvy. So I just knew that it was going to take me so long. Um, until I had some friends tell me to just use ChatGPT and ask it to help me format it. And so I spent hours and hours just like copy pasting the bullet points for every single character and having it structure it in the way that I wanted it to. And then I sat down after that June 1st date and I read from cover to cover the entire thing and edited it. And it actually, ChatGPT did a pretty good job of just making my bullet points, like just putting the paragraphs into the structure. It didn't change anything, which was really great. Um, but it definitely like did some minor wonky things that I had to catch.
Mhm.
And so I at that point had decided to add an astronomy table to each one as well, which wasn't originally in the book. So I copy pasted that into each character as I edited them, and I that started that journey, and I finished it 9 months later. And it was just so crazy. The amount of synchronicities, the amount of like really crazy things. I had a reading trade with a friend at the end of April, and she had told me I was about to go through like a 9 month gestational period. She was joking that like it was gonna feel like a birth. And I remembered being really confused by what she meant, but then it literally took me 9 months to edit the book, and it felt like such a huge journey into the underworld. And every single character, I had to look up their discovery charts too as part of the astronomy data section. And so even just like spending some time with their discovery charts and looking at where they were in my chart, plus where they were by transit, and what sign they were in when they were discovered, and what was the energy of their discovery chart, and like so I looked up every single person, every figure from the book in my own chart, and made so many notes on all the synchronicities. And what I found to be so crazy too is like almost all of them I related to at some point in my life or another. And the ones that I could remember a specific time that I resonated with. Like some of them were so specific. It was like, oh, that happened to me when I was a sophomore in college in like September. And I remember that because of this, or, it was like one-off moment. Every time that happened, I would look and be surprised that they weren't prominent in my chart, but I would look up the date because I write everything that I've ever thought. So luckily I have a lot of data
Mhm.
to go off of. And I would go back and I found that every single time I looked up a certain date thinking that they might have been transiting, they were. They were like exactly on my ascendant or they were exactly on my sun, and it was just so insane to kind of like work with them in that capacity. And like there were points where I felt crazy because nobody else is doing this. So I was like, look at how many synchronicities. I felt like that meme with the red strings and just connecting everything. I was like, why? And like one of my favorite examples of crazy synchronicities, um, there was one specific goddess. She was actually Eugenia, I think is how you say her name. I am not, yeah, I'm not great at pronunciation, but she was kind of controversial in her naming because she was, I think, Asteroid 45. She was one of the first 50, but she was actually named for a real person. She was like
Mm-hmm.
actually a queen. Um, so she wasn't technically a mythical goddess, and so it caused some controversy. And I went down a huge rabbit hole with her when I discovered her. And then the next day, like the literal day after, was the Louvre heist, like when the Louvre had got broken into, and they stole her stuff. It was like her crown that got stolen from the Louvre. And it was the day that I was researching her. And
Where
like
was
it
she
was
by
just
transit? Was there anything interesting by transit with her
oh
for
yeah,
like
I pulled the chart of the Louvre heist, and Asteroid Louvre was actually exactly on the MC of the moment that that
hmm,
happened, which was interesting. And then she was in the eighth house, which like first of all makes sense anyway. But she was like I forget exactly what was going on. This was months ago at this point, but she was like exactly aspecting the chart ruler and there was something else co-present in the eighth house too. But yeah, I mean it was pretty spot on.
nice
Um yeah, and it was just things like that kept happening where it was like
little
just
breadcrumbs from the universe.
exactly. It was
Yeah.
like the universe was giving me little like nudges and
Mm.
pieces. And yeah, it just became so fun to keep looking out for them and discovering all these different ways that you could use asteroids. Like there was an asteroid that was like a beekeeper. I wrote a Substack article about it, and I have a friend who's like really afraid of bees, but had a bee infestation in his apartment. And we ended up like using that asteroid to like track the entirety of the bee infestation, plus like when he got stung by a bee as a kid. Like it just was like silly,
Yeah.
but it showed up prominent in every date we picked and looked
Yeah.
at. And it was just so, it's funny because you feel almost insane looking up some of these things, but then it shows up
Yeah.
and
And
you're
I feel
like,
like
okay,
asteroids provide so much specificity, right? Because like I don't know what planet rules bees in astrology. I'm sure there is a planet associated, like I mean, I guess maybe
Mars.
Mercury, Mars, yeah,
Oh, or
wasps
Mercury.
especially, maybe Mars and
Yeah.
Mercury, but like
The
they're so
stinger.
broad that they like Mars and Mercury rule so much, you know, but then it's like the asteroids, you can get so specific and so granular with them
Yes.
that it can really bring a lot of meaning.
Yeah. And I think like, yeah, there's so much to be said about that too. I mean, that could be its own whole
Yeah.
episode. And I,
Yeah, I don't know if we've even really done an episode on like why asteroids. Like we have an asteroids
yeah,
101 episode about like how to work with them, and we recorded that a few years ago, so I don't fully remember, but I'm sure we like kind of went over like how you work with them and why, like a little bit of the why, but doing a
yeah,
full episode on like
we
why
should.
even care about asteroids? Like why are people why are you spending years on this? Why does this matter? Like
Yeah.
that would be a great episode.
That would be a great episode. Well, and I think I have two things to say about that. The first one is I saw a TikTok yesterday where somebody had brought up asteroid bride and groom in her comments, and she was a Hellenistic astrologer, and she was talking about Venus or something and timing for getting married. And she got like angry in this TikTok video. She was like, I don't use asteroids like bride and groom or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're not gonna like I think that's where the disconnect with asteroids are, is you're not going to use asteroid bride and groom to decide if somebody is your person.
Yeah.
But if you choose a wedding date and then later look back and you're like, oh my God, bride and groom were conjunct on the MC. Like, that's cool. Like,
Hmm.
that's what they're used for. It's
Yeah.
not supposed to be this, like, obviously the planets are more important. And, like,
Yeah, it's,
yeah.
like the Hellenistic sphere of influences of like, the fixed
Hmm.
stars, and then we have like Saturn and Jupiter and like different, like, until like the moon and the earth, and they all like influence each other. And like, yeah,
Right,
asteroids are definitely like closer in as far as the influence. Like Demetra would
right.
argue they're like the Greek daimons, which I think are like
Yeah,
really like one of the closest to Earth, right? But they can like
yeah,
really like they can add additional emphasis if you're already seeing a theme through another astrological technique. They can
right,
bring out synchronicities. They can bring just like really cool aha moments, but like they're not like hard and fast 100% going to always, like, does anything hard and fast 100% always give you what you want it to? Like,
right. No, and like, yeah, I think they're so cool to look back on and say, oh, this goddess, this deity, this whatever was with me this whole time while
yeah,
I was like
that you've
going through
been
that.
living their mythology. Well, and we just talk constantly about how asteroids tend to like make themselves known to you when you're already
Yeah.
living their mythology. So like I was ski bumming and then I found out I had Adonis on the ascendant, which Adonis as a
Hmm.
ski bum is like, I'd love to do that episode actually, because it's like
Yeah.
it works. And like I
Yeah.
became an herbalist and I found out I had Ceres on the ascendant, and I got in a
Yeah.
long-term committed partnership and I found out I had Hera on the ascendant. So it's like asteroids introduce themselves to you to like affirm like, okay, you're living this mythology.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like the other thing is just the fact that now that the Odyssey's out, and I feel like so
Mm-hmm.
many people are talking about myth again in a way where we really haven't seen in our lifetime, like it's
Yeah,
it's
not in such a
becoming
big scale. Yeah.
exactly like it's like random everyday people are now like so excited about myth all of a sudden.
As
And
opposed to when I was in eighth grade and we had to read the Odyssey and our teacher told us to read it upside down from our couch so we wouldn't fall asleep. I feel like that's normally how people think of the Odyssey.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I mean, I know I read it at some point when I was
Yeah,
a
most of
kid.
us have. Or read it because you're
Read
like
it. Yeah,
14 and you're
exactly.
not actually reading this long poem, but
Right. Oh yeah. Like I remember bits and pieces of it, but like
mhm.
from editing the book, it was like reopening all of that. And even though I haven't
Mhm.
read it as an adult, like I mean, all of the characters have asteroids, so I've like spent so much time with it. And I just think it's so cool to see this influx of people caring about myth again in a way where I think like, okay, look, like Odysseus has an asteroid, like so does
Mhm.
Penelope. Like you can see these stories playing out in the sky and how they are showing up now.
Like as
And I,
above, so below, as
right.
below, so above. Like we are reflected in the cosmos, and the astrologies
Yeah.
can, or the asteroids can really remind us of that. And then
Yes.
mythology just connects us to this like primal, internal, like ancient river. We're not the only people to ever experience these things. Like, what
Yeah.
has happened before will happen again. um yeah, there's this interconnectivity, and like myth can also just really connect you with like your psyche and your subconscious, and like really deep stuff that's hard to like get to through like logos and like your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so funny too because I've been noticing mythology being everywhere recently. Like a great example, I just ran into TJ Maxx with my mom and we found there was a notebook and the brand was Mnemosyne and
Hmm.
and I was like, "Oh my God, a memory book. Like how cute
Of
is
course,
that?
yeah.
Like that's
Hmm.
such a perfect name for something
That
like
is.
this." And then we were at the checkout and I noticed a little bottle of perfume and it said Demeter really big on it and it said something about like a grain smell or something. I don't know.
Okay, I was like, is
But
it like grain scented? Like,
I
what does that have to do with donor?
I don't know.
You can
But
smell
it
like corn.
yeah, you smell like corn. I think Demeter might have been the brand
Yeah.
question mark,
Or
but
well, and
or the name.
I have a breast milk chiller that's called the Ceres chill. And it's like, yeah, she's a
Mm,
mother. She probably
right.
breastfed. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny to like see that. And then like, I saw these like beautiful copies of the Odyssey there too. And it's like, yeah, myth is like among us now. Like
It
it's,
is. And when you like focus your attention on it, because it's like, there's so much constantly we have to sort through it, right? But then when you're like
yeah,
writing a book about asteroids for a couple years, you like
yeah,
notice it
you notice
everywhere.
it.
And then
Yeah.
like more people are focusing their attention on it now because of the
Yeah.
Odyssey. And
Yeah. And it's such a confirmation bias too. I do feel like, you
yeah,
know, getting really excited about finding a journal that said mnemosiny on it. Like
yeah.
nobody else would care, but it is just so cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was just so fascinating to see how it was showing up. And then, yeah, like when I finished the book, it was so funny. Like, I finished writing it in March and I left for Spain, like, pretty much the second I finished writing it. And I felt so sad. Like, I was so surprised by the reaction that I was having to being done with it. But I was so upset that it was done. And then I came home and I kind of just fell into a depression. Like I just cried like every day. And I woke up in the morning and like needed a new project and I did start writing a book about Okuro a long time ago and I like picked that back up. I was like, this is something.
Which we
Like,
also have an episode about Okiro as well.
yes. Yeah, I mean, especially now that Chiron's moved signs, it
Yeah.
drives me crazy that no one talks about her and
Or
still
Chariklo, who we also
yeah.
have an
Well,
episode about.
people are starting to talk about Chart Glow.
Some people.
It's
Chiron is definitely way more
I
popular.
mean, yes, but Okiro is never talked about. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, so I started writing her book again that I started a long time ago, and then I started going to these poetry nights and it like really inspired me and the guy who owns the bookstore who runs them he's really into myth too, so we were having like a lot of really cool conversations about it. And a couple months ago I had Kronos eating his baby on my nails, like painted on my nails,
As
and
one
I had
does.
Rhea, as one does. I know. I loved it though. Every time somebody said, "What's on your nails?" I was like, Kronos eating his baby. And they were like, "Oh."
You're like, I have an Aquarius stellium in the eighth
Yeah.
house with Saturn and Aquarius. So here you
Yeah.
go.
And that's what
Lori does.
that's
I don't, just to clarify. I do
yeah, yeah.
not.
The person who gets Kronos eating their baby on
Yeah.
their nails is the one who has the Aquarius stallion. Go figure. Um, but it was hilarious. I loved it. I loved it so much. And then I had Rhea on the other hand, and I was thinking so much about time and
Mhm.
like, we've done an episode on Rhea. We've talked about Rhea a lot, but I loved this idea of like Rhea being the fluid motion of time and the idea of like flow state
Mhm.
versus Chronos being like fixed time and like the way that humans perceive time, basically. I was thinking so much about that. And we do at the end of the poetry nights, they would give a prompt, and they gave the prompt as time.
Mm.
And I had just gotten them painted on my nails that day. And I was like, okay, this is it. Like I keep telling myself I was gonna write this. I keep telling myself I was gonna retell their stories. And so I started writing a poem about them and I didn't finish it. And then the next month I still had them painted on my nails actually. Um and he we talked about myth for most of it and then he gave homework to write a poem about a myth. And I was like, okay, I have to finish this poem. Like, first time, now a myth. And I went home and I sat down and I was like, okay, I know how to write poetry, although I don't. Like, I don't write it, but I like know, I understand it. And I was like, I'm gonna just do this. So I sat down and I just poured myself into it. And all of a sudden, I had like 50 poems just written. And as one does with a fixed Aquarius sign,
Yeah.
fixed air. Um, but that's actually the thing that felt like it healed me. Like finishing the encyclopedia was great, and then it just felt like I needed to celebrate being done with it. I needed to have a party. I needed to celebrate the goddess, and I needed to retell their stories. And it just felt so deeply important that I do that. And yeah, the poetry book is officially out and available on Amazon. It's called If the Pen Was Given to Her. Retellings from her perspective. There's like 52 poems in there now. And yeah, I felt so just like so much better
Mm-hmm.
after giving them that voice and telling their stories in a way that I felt like they wanted them told versus the way that they've been told for years and years, generations. And then one day I just woke up and felt like it was done. And I threw the book a huge party. I celebrated the goddess. And it's been so funny. This happened the other day. I don't think I even told you about this, but I at a meetup, we did like an intuitive practice, and my medium friend who owns the shop that we just sold him, we sold him the shop. He described a rock with a like a cross shape in it and the two of swords. And it reminded me of that rock that was dedicated to Hecate in Eleusis. It was
Mm-hmm.
at the Cave of Hades. And I sat in front of that rock for a really long time. And I like,
The rocket Eleusis.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can send you a picture of it, but it's basically just like it's a giant boulder that had two um it's like Hecate's um torches and they're crossed. And yeah, I spent a lot of time there and for some reason that had come up and I kept thinking about that and I was like, I wrote myself multiple pages in front of that. And I opened my journal from Greece and I found it. And I wrote myself an entire page that said, you should write a poetry book retelling the goddess's stories.
Mm.
And it was just such a like, once again, funny little breadcrumb trail that I ended up
Mm-hmm.
on. But yeah, I wrote an entire page sitting in front of that rock, like channeling this idea to retell the goddess from a poetry perspective in a way that they could have their voices back. And I wrote that 2 years ago. So yeah, 2 Septembers.
Whoa.
I know. Insane. And it just kind of made me laugh because I was like, okay, this has been in the works for a really long time, even though it took such a short time to actually write them and to do it. And it's been really exciting. And now
Yeah.
with this Mercury retrograde, ironically enough, which also started exactly at my third house perfection month, um,
And your third house is
I
ruled by Mercury.
yes, that too. Virgo third house. I felt really just like ready to finalize and get things ready. So I actually just restructured the book a little bit again. Um, and this is new, but I ended up realizing I kind of made this decision a long time ago, but I didn't actually do anything about it till just now. But I wrote a couple short chapters at the very beginning of the book that were like, the astronomy behind asteroids, what is an asteroid, frequently asked questions, how to do interpretation, how to pull asteroids on astro.com or other resources, just like that kind of stuff. And I was gonna put it at the beginning of the first book of the series because it's 2,000 pages. So obviously it's gonna have to be split into a few books. Um, but something in me was like, no, you should actually separate them. And I taught a little class in December about the asteroids, and every time somebody had a really good question that they asked, I wrote it down. And I had originally meant to go back and add that to the book, but I didn't. And so I ended up doing that. And now it's actually like almost 200 pages. Um, which is kind of what I expected, but it was like 30. So I basically added in all of the frequently asked questions and like spent a little bit more time with like what is an asteroid? What are we talking about? How do you use them? And some of the examples that I was kind of saving for future books, I ended up just putting in this. And um, I wrote an article for NCGR that they published about finding your name in the stars and like in the asteroids. So I actually put in a little section about that, like a quick chapter. I put a quick chapter about like the fun asteroids, like go look up your favorite musician, go look up your favorite animal, go look up your favorite drink. Like, I don't know, anything. Like, asteroid potato exists. Like, go look for things, and like see what you find through things like that. And so I spent a little more time on that. And so what we ended up deciding is that book one, or volume one, is going to come out, I think, November 16th
Of 2026.
and of 2026. And it's just gonna be that first volume for now. The characters are gonna need a little bit more editing
Mm,
and just making sure that I'm a little dyslexic with numbers, so I need to make sure that all of the asteroid numbers are correct and that I didn't switch their order around as I do sometimes. Um, so while that's been going through that process, I have a couple editors reading through book one, and then yeah, it's gonna be out in November. We elected the Mars Jupiter conjunction
mm,
because
nice.
Mars is my Time Lord, and it's in my second house opposite my Saturn.
Mars opposite Saturn.
Might as well just lean into it,
Yeah,
right?
honestly, but I feel like Mars and Saturn can be really useful for like effortful stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, a Mars Jupiter conjunction in a day chart, like, and it's exactly conjunct the South Node too, which is interesting. It's
That
like
is
just
interesting.
the conjunction's just minutes from the South Node.
Well, that'll be an interesting day.
I know. I was like, I don't know if this is good or bad, but Mars is my Time Lord and Jupiter rules my ninth,
Just lean into
and
it.
I'm leaning into it.
Yeah, just some gas on that ninth house.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I might as well use Jupiter while it's having a moment with my Time Lord and ruler of my 10th and
Hmm.
5th. Like,
Yeah,
it
we love the
feels like
fire
it.
sign Jupiter. I have
Yeah.
Jupiter in Sag, and I'm just like, Jupiter and Leo, let's go.
Yes. I know. I'm so excited for it to be in Leo.
Yeah, quite nice.
Quite
Um,
nice.
Exciting. And so
Yeah.
then the actual encyclopedia bits are to be
Yeah.
announced once they've, I'm because it'll just be a wee bit of editing, just
Yeah.
teeniest amount.
Yeah. But I really like the longer I sat with it, the more I really liked the idea of there being kind of like a textbook, and then here's the encyclopedia of the figures, the characters that are
Mhm.
being talked about. And yeah, and I feel like the textbook actually kind of stands alone. Like if you're not interested in the encyclopedia part, you actually could get a lot out of that book.
Mhm.
And it also talks about like the different types of myth and how to find their mythologies, where they all come from, like the pantheons that are included in the book. Like it is pretty comprehensive. So, yeah, I feel like it stands alone as its own book. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I wanted is like, here's this resource. And then it's definitely going to take a little bit longer, but maybe not that long. Like, I
Mhm.
do already have a lot of things like moving with it. Um, and using some AI tools to edit the number stuff and catch those
Yeah.
mistakes. But I'm looking at my Venus return for maybe the release of of the probably 3 to 4 books that is going to be. those. Um, and I pulled it today. It's actually my Venus return happens sometime between April 15th and 16th, which is interesting because the conjunction happens between November 15th and 16th. Um, so I was like,
Nice.
that's like exactly like 5 months later. And it's my Venus return, which I have Venus in Pisces on the MC. But also there's like an Aries stellium. It's interesting. It's like the Sun, Mercury, Saturn are together in Aries, which I have that in Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, huh, a happy Sun, an unhappy Saturn, and a neutral Mercury are together where I have like the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually really resonated with that chart. And the moon was in Leo with the Mars-Jupiter conjunction again because it's
Mm.
post-retrograde. So
Oh, Mars retrograde. Something to
yay.
look forward to.
Hooray. Yeah,
Wow. All good stuff,
crazy.
Lori. I'm just like
Yeah,
so excited that it's finally like
it's
really
coming.
coming into the world. You're like in the
Yes.
like early stages of labor, like starting to like birth it out.
I know.
The gestation
Yeah.
is ending.
Yeah. And it feels so good to have like a date on at least book
Yes.
one. Like
Hmm.
the other ones are still, who knows how long that's actually gonna take. But I do
Hmm.
feel like if I really commit to it over the winter like I did last year, it should be
You
ready
got it.
by April.
You got
Like
it.
April feels so far away, but also like not at all.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, for folks listening, Lori's website is linked down below, so you can go find all of her stuff there. My website is linked down below as well. I'm still on maternity leave, so I'm definitely not doing as much as Lori, but in the future, we're recording this in July of 2026. But we both do offer astrology readings as well. I'll be getting back into offering readings starting next month. In July or in August of 2026. But yeah, you can definitely connect with both of us down below. If you have any questions or thoughts or reflections about the book or about asteroids, like please reach out to us on Instagram. We're Conversations W Planets. Or comment down below. We love hearing from folks. And yeah, we're just really excited to have
Yeah.
Lori finally wrapping up these books.
It's coming.
Yes, it's happening.
Yes.
Amazing. All right. And then this is our season finale. So we
Yeah.
will keep recording episodes and probably release season 4 sometime in the fall of 2026. So stay tuned for more info about that. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any personal stories to share or thoughts and reflections about what we discussed in this episode, please comment down below or reach out to us on Instagram. And please come follow us on Instagram at ConversationsWPlanets, where we share forecasts and updates about the astrological movements happening in the sky, as well as updates about our episodes. The link to our Instagram is in the show notes down below.